About 3 years ago, I made a video where I went over the most iconic eviction speeches in Big Brother history. At the start of that video, I made it clear, right up front, that no eviction speech had ever actually saved anyone before. And at the time, that was true. In fact, up through the Week 6 eviction of Big Brother 26, there was a legitimate 0% success rate when it came to saving yourself with your eviction speech. 315 targets sat on the block on eviction night, hoping that they could maybe sway enough votes to keep them with their final eviction plea. But all 315 of them failed and were evicted anyways. At this point, it truly felt like that final eviction plea was just a formality, a little TV moment that brought a small amount of drama every once in a while, but never anything that actually impacted the vote. That is, until the 316th eviction. On the fateful day of September 5th, 2024, someone finally flipped the vote and managed to evade eviction because of their speech. So, today, I'm gonna tell you how it happened. Consider subscribing if you aren't already. And without further ado, here is the one eviction speech that actually worked. Funnily enough, this video actually picks up right where I left off with the video I made last year about the power of veto competition this week. So if you want a little backstory refresher, you can go watch that one first. For this story, we'll start right after the veto ceremony. It was week 7 in the Big Brother 26 house, and following Leah using the veto to save Angela, the 3 nominees on the block were Joseph, Rubina, and Kimo. The AI arena was at play here, which meant that when eviction night came, the 3 nominees would compete in a competition where the winner would earn their safety, and the 2 losers would remain on the block and face the eviction vote. In order to understand how the eventual vote went down, you need to understand how the house was structured at this point in the game. The players were at the final 10 here, the last round of the pre-jury, and the house was somewhat divided into 3 distinct groups. Firstly, there was the very obvious trio of Tikor, Rubina, and Kimo. Then there was the slightly less obvious trio of Chelsea, Mackenzie, and Cam. And lastly, there was this grouping of Quinn, Leah, and Joseph. But for the sake of things, we can throw Angela into that group too, because she was attached to Leah. So we have 3 groupings that I will call Tikor's trio, Chelsea's trio, and Quinn's group. And for this vote, it looked like Chelsea and Quinn's group were going to come together against Tikor's trio. This was largely because Quinn wanted to keep Joseph safe this week, and since Quinn had kept everyone in Chelsea's group safe and off the block, Chelsea's trio agreed to help Quinn and vote to keep Joseph safe too. Plus, Tikor, Rubina, and Kimo were so obviously a power trio, and leaving them fully intact going into the jury stage of the game felt really dangerous. So voting to evict either Kimo or Rubina here seemed to make sense for both Chelsea and Quinn's groups. Between Kimo and Rubina though, Kimo was the main target, and the main plan seemed to be that if Kimo didn't win the AI arena, then he would be evicted against both Rubina and Joseph. So, going into eviction night, there were 3 possibilities for Kimo. If Kimo won the AI arena, then he'd earn his safety. If Joseph won the AI arena, then Kimo would be evicted in a probably unanimous 7-0 vote next to Rubina. And if Rubina won the AI arena, then Kimo would still be evicted, but this time in a vote of 5-2. With Tikor and Rubina voting to keep him, but Chelsea, Mackenzie, Cam, Leah, and Angela voting to keep Joseph. So, no matter which way you sliced it, Kimo had to win the AI arena, or he was going home. During the week, though, there were a couple things going on in the background. Joseph and Angela's relationship faced some friction due to some of the stuff Joseph had said to her while she was on the block, and Chelsea took notice of this. Angela was a very volatile player, and it would not surprise anyone really if she voted to evict Joseph out of spite, especially considering that Angela had what seemed to be a close bond with Kimo, and Chelsea was totally aware of this possibility. Chelsea herself had been pretty iffy towards Joseph at this point too, and she wasn't really sure that she wanted to keep him come eviction night. He was a sneaky player who clearly knew a lot about the game, and Joseph staying really didn't benefit Chelsea all that much. Chelsea tested the waters about maybe flipping some people against Joseph, but ultimately it didn't seem to land. So it seemed that Chelsea had reluctantly fallen back and was back on the plan to keep Joseph. However, she did keep her mind open about the vote going into the eviction. At the eviction, we saw Rubina pull out the W in the AI arena, which removed her from the block and finalized that Kimo and Joseph would be the two facing the eviction vote. At this point, Chelsea was still up in the air about who she was going to vote out. However, since Kimo was still on the block following the arena, it seemed most likely that he would be evicted here. But then Kimo stood up and gave his eviction speech. While you may be expecting it to be this carefully thought out, strategic recitation, it wasn't. Rather, it was an outpouring of emotions as Kimo choked up and pleaded for his life in the game. He spoke about how he wasn't just there for himself, but also for his late brother, who was the first person to introduce him to Big Brother. He then laid out his other motivations for coming onto the show to provide representation as both a native Hawaiian and as a queer person. And he finished it off by asking the others to please keep him in the house and to not let his dream end before jury. It wasn't a long speech. It wasn't a strategic play. It was a genuine plea from the heart. But in this instance, it was the best speech he could have given. This speech hit Chelsea hard, and it made her next decision super easy. Chelsea was already wanting to turn on Joseph, and the pure emotion and desire to stay that Kimo exuded during his speech was enough to solidify to her that she was going to make this move. Chelsea saw that Angela was also moved to tears by Kimo's speech, and since Angela and Joseph had their little beef this week, she felt pretty confident that Angela was going to vote to keep Kimo. Since she knew that she could count on Tikor and Rubina to vote out Joseph too, since Kimo was in their trio, Chelsea changing her vote from evicting Kimo over to evicting Joseph would make it a 4-3 vote, and Joseph would go home. So when Chelsea walked into the diary room, she made her move, and she voted to evict Joseph. After 315 evictions, it had finally been done. Kimo's speech swayed Chelsea to vote to keep him, and with Tikor, Rubina, and Angela voting to keep him as well, it was enough to flip the vote and make history. Well, it would have been enough had Angela actually voted to keep him. Despite Chelsea's hopes, Angela did not vote to evict Joseph, and she voted against Kimo. Now, Angela definitely wanted to keep Kimo over Joseph, no doubt about it, but Leah was very close with Joseph, and since Angela felt indebted to Leah after she saved her with the veto this week, she promised to vote the way that she wanted, which meant voting out Kimo. Even so, you could tell that Angela was struggling with the vote, but in the end, she felt she didn't have the numbers to keep him, so she voted him out. So, what now? This is a video about the one successful vote flip, but if Angela didn't vote to keep Kimo, then who did? Well, I've hid the truth long enough. Kimo didn't just flip one person with this eviction speech. He actually flipped a second person, Mackenzie. Unlike Chelsea, Mackenzie hadn't had as many strategic thoughts about getting rid of Joseph prior to the vote. Did she like Kimo more than Joseph? Yeah, probably. But her allies had made a plan to evict Kimo, and that's what she was gonna do. But when Kimo started making his speech, the tears started flowing, and they just kept coming. Kimo's speech didn't just hit her in the heart, it hit her in the soul. In this moment, Mackenzie saw everything that Kimo stood for, not just as a player, but as a person, and it opened a rift inside her. Does she stick with the plan and vote out Kimo, or does she go with her heart and vote out Joseph? Well, as luck would have it, she didn't have much time to make up her mind, because Mackenzie was the first person called to the diary room. Even when Julie asked her to cast her vote, Mackenzie hesitated, as if her mind was still battling it out for what to do. But ultimately, she made a decision. In the 49 seconds from when Kimo ended his speech to when Julie asked her to cast her vote, Mackenzie chose what she saw to be the bigger purpose, and she voted to evict Joseph. So, with Tikor and Rubina's locked-in votes, combined with Chelsea's flipped vote, and Mackenzie's flipped vote, it was actually enough to get the job done. For the first time ever, a target had saved themselves with their eviction speech, and by a vote of 4-3, Joseph was evicted from the Big Brother house. I think the beauty of this vote lies within the motivations. As I mentioned, Kimo wasn't using his speech as a big strategic play. Was he hoping to sway some votes in his favor? Of course. But he didn't try and fool anyone with ingenuine words or pleas about positioning. He simply let his heart do the talking, and that's exactly why it worked. For Chelsea, she already knew that her strategic best move would be to get rid of Joseph. So really, she was just looking for any excuse to flip her vote, and Kimo's impassioned plea provided the perfect reason to do so. And for Mackenzie, well, she needed to be swayed emotionally, because strategically, it didn't make sense for her to keep Kimo. Chelsea had inroads with Kimo's group and had legitimate reasons to get rid of Joseph, whereas Mackenzie didn't really have either of those things, so trying to sway her strategically would have had no effect. Instead, she needed to be hit with a different angle, and Kimo's emotional plea ended up being the key ingredient needed to make it happen. Whether it be in real life or in the Big Brother house, the stars sometimes align themselves, in a way, for something truly exceptional to take place. Never before had something like this happened, and who knows if it'll ever happen again. But on that day, September 5th, 2024, Kimo Apaka found the right string of words to flip not just one, but two people into voting to keep him. And that's pretty freaking special. The end.
I think I would want Joseph to stay.
I think Kimo would definitely come for my head.
It seems like Quinn and Cam are both gung-ho with keeping Joseph. I don't really know how I feel about that, but I am working closely with Cam, so I might just have to risk Joseph staying in the house.
I love you all. I came in here with two dreams, one for my brother, one for myself. I want to provide a visibility representation as a queer person, as a native Hawaiian. I really want to play this game. I'm not ready for this dream to end. Please keep me in this house.
I sadly vote to evict Joseph.
I sadly vote to evict Joseph.
Joseph.
By a vote of 4-3, Joseph, you are evicted from the Big Brother house.
Oh.
The fact that I survived, I'm still gagged.
When I heard Kimo in those final minutes, there's no way I could send him home.
So I was going to send Kimo home. But then, after hearing Kimo's speech, it really resonated with me, and I cannot send him home. Did you vote to keep Kimo? So did I.